All right, let's dive into one of the most elegant, really fascinating control systems in the entire vestibulocerebellum, the nodulus, and its absolutely critical role as the master timing controller for what's known as velocity storage.
Welcome back. This is the third explainer in our series, and as always, we're drawing from the fantastic review materials over at Australian Dizziness Clinics. Today, we're going to tackle a puzzle that really gets to the heart of how our vestibular system works.
So let's start with this core physiological puzzle. When your semicircular canals get stimulated, the raw neural signal they send out lasts for about 7 seconds. But here's the thing. Our perception of that rotation and the nystagmus that it drives feels like it lasts for around 15 seconds. So how does the brain more than double the duration? Well, this timing mismatch isn't an accident. It is a very deliberate feature, and it really sets the stage for everything we're about to cover. You see, the brain's solution for this timing problem is a system that is so powerful, it actually creates its own new challenge, the need for incredibly precise control. This is what we call the velocity storage problem.
And here it is, just laid out plain and simple. On one side, you've got the physical reality. The semicircular canals send a signal that just dies out after about 7 seconds. But on the other side, you've got the physiological output, the vestibulo-ocular reflex, which keeps going for more than twice as long. The brain has got to bridge that gap somehow.
And this is how it does it. It's called the velocity storage mechanism, or VSM for short. Now think of it kind of like a neural echo chamber. It's this network of fibers in the brainstem that takes that short 7-second signal and just keeps it reverberating, which effectively extends its life, and with it, our sensation of movement. It's a truly ingenious solution.
But you got to understand, this thing is a powerful engine. I mean, the circuitry that creates this reverberating activity is inherently unstable. Without some kind of regulator, this system that's designed to help us would actually become a huge liability. It needs a brake.
And that's where the protagonist of our story comes in, the nodulus, which acts as the dedicated, inhibitory brake on this incredibly powerful velocity storage engine.
So here's the crucial point, the main takeaway right here. The Purkinje cells of the nodulus and the uvula, they provide the only direct inhibitory brake on this velocity storage network. I mean, those pathways are the sole off switch. It's just a beautifully specific and absolutely critical piece of our neural architecture. You know, a really great way to think about this is that the nodulus acts as a dump switch. It doesn't just tap the brakes gently. It can completely discharge or dump the entire stored velocity signal when it decides that signal just isn't appropriate anymore.
And tilt suppression illustrates this perfectly. So imagine you've just stopped spinning in a chair. Your VSM is still humming along, right? It's creating that post-rotatory nystagmus. But if you then tilt your head forward, your otoliths, those are your gravity sensors, signal a change. The nodulus intelligently integrates these two different signals, realizes, hey, we're not rotating anymore, and bam, it hits that dump switch, killing the nystagmus almost instantly.
So you can probably guess what happens if that dump switch is broken. In a patient with a lesion in the nodulus, this whole tilt suppression thing just fails. You can spin them, stop them, tilt their head forward, and that post-rotatory nystagmus just keeps on going and going. The VSM is running totally unchecked because the brake pedal is completely disconnected.
Now this failure leads to maybe the most dramatic clinical sign of a nodular lesion, when the VSM just starts to oscillate on its own. And this is what we call periodic alternating nystagmus.
Periodic alternating nystagmus, or PAN, is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a spontaneous horizontal nystagmus where the eyes will beat, say, to the right for about 1.5 minutes, then they fade away, and then they spontaneously reverse and start beating to the left. It is an incredibly striking clinical sign, and it is pathognomonic. It points directly to dysfunction of the nodulus.
And the cycle is remarkably consistent. You'll literally see about 90 seconds of the eyes beating in one direction, followed by a short little null period, just a few seconds where the eyes are quiet, and then another 90 seconds of beating in the opposite direction. This oscillating pattern is the VSM system completely running away with itself, totally unregulated.
And the underlying physiology explains exactly why this happens. When that inhibitory pathway from the nodulus is lesioned, there is nothing left to dampen the VSM. The whole system becomes unstable and it just starts to oscillate, creating that rhythmic alternating nystagmus. So the clinical sign you see maps directly onto the failed physiology, its cause and effect.
And what's so beautiful about this from a clinical standpoint is that we can actually treat it by targeting the exact mechanism. A drug called baclofen is a GABA-B agonist. So since the nodulus's own natural GABAergic inhibition is lost, we can provide a pharmacological substitute. Baclofen goes in, it dampens the excitability of the vestibular nuclei, and that stabilizes the VSM and suppresses the PAN. It's just a perfect example of targeted neuropharmacology.
Okay, so let's pull all this together and consolidate it into the key clinical signs and takeaways that you can actually bring into your practice.
So when you're thinking about the nodulus, these are the signs to really look for. We've talked a lot about PAN and the impaired velocity storage, but you'll also see a failure to suppress nystagmus with fixation. You'll see issues with otolith canal interaction like a tilted subjective visual vertical, and of course that classic central type direction-changing positional nystagmus.
If you take away just 3 things from this whole explainer, let it be these. Number 1. The VSM is the brain's clever way of extending vestibular signals, but it is powerful and it absolutely needs to be controlled. Number 2. The nodulus is that critical inhibitory brake, and when it fails, you get these really specific signs like PAN. And number 3, we can treat PAN effectively with baclofen because it basically acts as a pharmacological replacement for that lost nodular inhibition.
So today we've really seen how the nodulus regulates timing. But the cerebellum does so much more, especially when it comes to learning and adapting our movements. So in our next explainer, the cerebellar cortex circuit, we're going to zoom way in, right down to the cellular level, to understand the beautiful machinery of Purkinje cells and climbing and mossy fibers. We're going to see exactly how the vestibulocerebellum learns from its mistakes.
Thank you so much for joining us for this series. To explore more topics about dizziness, vertigo, and imbalance, and to get access to a ton of great clinician and patient resources, please visit AustralianDizzinessClinics.com. And of course, we'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and leave a rating.